started. I'm just going to give some general opening remarks. Really nice to see the full room. I want to remind everybody that we are here because we love the place we live and we love to recreate in it, and we also want to protect our businesses and our natural resources. I want to remind everybody that the board has been committed to not kind of pulling the plug on all OHB access to county roads, and that we've really taken steps to have conversations with many of you and to get feedback from you all along with staff to get that feedback from you all because we do care about creating a balanced solution for us all. I also remind everybody that the Board of County Commissioners does have the authority and the responsibility to control our roads and to protect our resources here in the county. And so we're trying to balance all of that together. Let's see. We've talked about a couple of issues that have kind of hit a threshold and a tipping point, if you will. One of those is our public or individual users and unsafe and trespassing issues that we have been reported to see a lot around the city limits. We also have kind of precipice of commercial and outfitter users. And so I want to remind everybody too that I think I personally say public versus private or public and commercial, and we haven't quite agreed on what comes out of our mouths at the same time. So I don't want anybody to leave this room and misinterpret one word that kind of spin. Let's get clarity while we're here and in here tonight on the language we're using, because it is very nuanced and it can be very complicated. Lake County has a bunch of different areas, is unique in and of itself, but in all of our geography just has a lot of unique issues to consider. And so I think some of us talked about things in one context for us personally. And if we need clarity in that conversation tonight, please don't hesitate to speak up and ask for that. I think that would definitely benefit us as decision makers and benefit the conversation. I hope that we can have a healthy debate tonight. Let's be respectful, as I think we've done a pretty good job of being in all these conversations. We do have some staff online as well, and I will just remind, and I think CC put out in the chat too, with the presentation that we have that Anne is going to give to us, we cannot see hands raised. So please politely interrupt us and get our attention for those of you joining us online. Let's see. What else is on the list here? I think that really, really what we want to get out of tonight, which I think there's still a little bit of confusion or ambiguity, and what we'd love to hear is how we really get specific on some of the rules and regs that we are considering. And I'm not sure exactly what's in your presentation, but I do think also we have the ordinance that we're considering, and then we have the process of permitting commercial outfitters. And so the ordinance, I personally would love to hear what is more beneficial and what we want some clarity in on the ordinance that's going to be applied across the board. That might not be clear for especially commercial users with and through that permitting process. So any specifics that you can come up with and other suggestions for us would of course be most helpful. Any questions for me? And do you want to go through your whole presentation before opening up for conversation? Okay, so we'll go through Anne's full presentation, but then we'll open it up for discussion and go from there. Any questions from anybody before? Okay, Anne Schneider is our Community Planning and Development Director. For those of you who are not familiar.
Wow, I am like blown away by the amount of people that came out, and it's really cool weather tonight to talk about this. And so thank you so much. Your input tonight, giving us feedback Nothing has, I think it's indicating, nothing's really been decided yet. But what we have been commissioned with as staff for the county is to develop tools and resources to help make some informed decisions on these talking points. And so I do have a presentation that we're going to go through and just kind of talk about the scope of work. The other thing that I want, I didn't actually anticipate quite this many folks, but I have my staff report, which is going to go into a lot more detail than I'm going to do tonight with you. So I've got several hard copies here, but if any of you would like that emailed to you, because it just goes into a lot more depth, background information, and probably explain some of the process a little bit more. If you have questions tonight, please, shoot them my way. I'm happy to do that. But we do have other resources available. So I've got some hard copies, but if you'll put something by your name, I do think that we've got email addresses on here, is that right? So if you let us know that you want a copy of the staff report, I'm happy to get that to you too. It's just gonna have a little bit more than what I'm gonna give you tonight. So let's go ahead and get started. And see if y'all, oh, I've got a clicker, don't I? That's gonna help. So first thing I think what we can all agree on is Lake County loves recreation. No matter what form it is, I tried to find photos of just kind of the diversity in the community. And so when staff looked at this, we wanted to be really cognizant, the board really wanted us to consider a balance between all user groups. Both, and like Sarah said, we tend to struggle, is it private or public use? So tonight, I think in my presentation, when we get that kind of, well, I'll make that kind of clarity added. Or if it's commercial, we want to, the board has really emphasized to staff, consider balance, look at impacts, look at a transparent and try to provide as much clarity as possible in the regulations and the tools that you're going to bring forth to the community. And so that's really been kind of our mission and what we've been trying to drive this work with. So let's go ahead and go to our next slide here. So I'm gonna go in there. Okay. So why are we even having this conversation? I've seen a lot of comment out there, like, why is the county using resources and time and money to even be talking about this right now? And so I think one of the first things that we recognized is that there was a disconnect in land use and roadway use. There's areas of the county where we have decided through a vetted process that for several different reasons, commercial outfitting and guiding is prohibited on land parcels, but roadways aren't zoned. So in the industrial mining area of Lake County, outfitting and guiding is a prohibited use. And why is it prohibited? Well, the planning commission and the board at the time that we created the outfitting and guiding regulations felt there were a lot of life safety issues associated with the industrial mining area. There's inherent risk and danger. There's trespass issues because we have so many mining claims that are overlapping. So for a myriad of reasons, the zoning code doesn't support outfitting and guiding. But is there outfitting and guiding going on in county roads through the IMs? Yes, and there historically has been. So we needed to figure out our regulations aren't even consistent, and actually we don't even have a method by which to consider county road use for commercial operations. So that's just one of the first things that we determined, hey, we need to start taking a look at our regulations. Next, the ordinance that was in existence didn't talk about commercial use at all. It didn't even consider it. So at the time that ordinance was put in place, my understanding is, we really wanted that point A to point B for public-private users, and we had a new way to be tracked, right? So we really wanted to make recreation accessible for public/private users. But nothing within the ordinance really spoke to commercial use. And then community goals. We started really hearing that when we went out to a listening session, you probably all remember, I think it was in August, about a year ago, we heard from the public, and the private users, they wanted to preserve that OHV use. They liked point A to point B. But we understood that we needed to just consider all aspects of the ordinance. We heard from everyone to make sure that we ensured a balance, that this access is available for everyone. That there isn't one user group that is causing an imbalance in the use. Use safety. I'm sure that everyone's aware that this is an issue in Lake County, and we heard a lot of public comment about it. And then we heard straight across the board, mitigate the negative impacts. Negative impacts, and we'll get into some of those other comments here in just a second. And create a clear policy to address use. People were asking us, well, what's the clear policy? We don't even understand. We don't understand what's legal, what's not, how the ordinance is being interpreted. So it was an ask to have a very clear policy coming forward. And we can all agree Lake County loves recreation. But here are some of the things that we heard in that listening session. And this input has really driven the work by staff. We heard there is a business concern. There is a concern over adverse impact to operations and employees. We heard we need to create a balance in the degree of use in the winter and the summer and make sure there's access for everyone. We need to mitigate impacts. We need to maintain groomed trails. Commercial operations. We heard there should be a quality versus quantity approach. We had the question, what's sustainable? How much more use could we consider within the county coming in from a commercial standpoint? What is the impact of rentals coming in from out of the area? Commercial operators should be local and participating in the local economy. Tracked OHVs damage groomed trails and should be disallowed. Commercial users should contribute to an equitable manner to winter grooming. And this is the East Side Mining District should be preserved for public use. The East Side Mining District should be preserved for non-motorized recreational use. Special events should be considered. Commercial operators in the East Side Mining District are good players. Environmental safety and trespass issues are associated with rentals. Challenges over balance between commercial and public use is a new condition. In the past, it was working. Dangerous use activity on OHVs, no helmets or protective gear. Too many riders, no regard for rules of the road, excessive speeds, darting out into traffic, and the like. So those are the things that we heard back from you. And these are just some examples. We have lots of public feedback, but we just kind of highlighted some of the ones that we have heard. So when we went to the board and we said, let's design a scope of work that addresses a starting point in this work. And so we have separated it into private user groups, commercial user groups, and the ordinance. So for private users, create youth programming. Really, I think a great idea to support our youth and teach them how to safely operate. And so CPD has asked for the help of our Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Pros Department to say, can you partner with us? And they said, absolutely, to bring about some youth programming. And then law enforcement, the sheriff, is working with us to say, hey, this is a great diversion program to have some youth programming instead of fining parents and kids. Hey, let's support the youth and let's find ways to encourage safe use. Maintain point A to B. So far in our check-ins with the board, I believe that we have heard from the public and they would very much like to maintain point A to point B. The only things that we're concerned about, or that I've heard, is just making sure that point A to point B, that we're using OHVs as a private or public user for a recreational purpose, that they're not meant to replace our primary transportation. I know there's some extenuating circumstances for a couple things, maybe within the community, but the majority of users, they should be using OHVs as recreational, not to go to the grocery store or the post office or, and they should be operating on our county roads consistent with Title 41 or the rules of the road, speed limits, lights, turn signals, all of the things that the sheriff's office is working on right now in the ordinance, just to make sure that that's very clear too. So you know exactly as a private user. So we're not looking to diminish that use, just educate that use. And then the road use guide. And I'm going to pause in a few minutes to turn it over to Bryce on the CPD team, and he's going to talk a little bit about the road use guide. And then for commercial users, we're going to talk a lot tonight about the majority of my presentation is about the commercial recreational permit. So this is a permit that will allow, so staff is bringing forth to the county commissioners a tool by which they can permit commercial use like county roads. And then also the road use guide. And lastly, our scope of work will work on the ordinance to make sure that we put in the permit process into the ordinance and that the enforcement portion of the ordinance is very clear. There's also other items that the Board of County Commissioners may decide to put into that ordinance to further inform the use on county roads. So tools and resources. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over, just like I said right now, to the road use guide. And Bryce is going to provide us with just a little sneak in to what that looks like and talk about it for just a minute.
Sure.
Thank you, Bryce.
So yeah, Bryce Ehrlich, I'm Deputy Director of Community Planning and Development. One of the things I handle is mapping and GIS and stuff like that. And so as we were starting this process, we decided to create the road use guide. And it's really meant to be a tool for decision makers to analyze and to really look comprehensively and holistically at recreation use in the county right now. So some of you that have been in some of the meetings have seen this before. I know it's going to be hard to see. This is meant to be more of an interactive map, and so we can provide a link to this. There is a link to this map on the Community Planning and Development website, the mapping subsection. So I would invite you all to look at it yourselves and to toggle on the layers and play around with it a bit. But I just want to kind of show you through what we've created. Myself and then my GIS staff member Tristan have kind of created some of this data and symbolized it differently so it pops out a little bit more, so that we can analyze the things that we're really focused on here tonight. Okay, so what we have here is we're trying to emphasize the roads that we're actually talking about, right? They're county roads that are for the most part unpaved, right? I know OHVs on paved roads, not really necessarily the best tour experience. And so we understand the county roads are used for conveyance to and from different areas of the county. In the winter time, some of those county roads that are paved become groomed trails. So we'll go through all that. But really, this is the road we're talking about. We're talking about summer and, like non-snowmobile, non-winter use. We have orange roads, which are four-wheel drive roads. So kind of the premier destination for private users to go out there. Yellow roads, which are unpaved but two-wheel drive accessible. So we have a lot of those in the East Side Mining District. There's an existing kind of tour thing called the Route of the Silver Kings, which utilizes a lot of these two-wheel drive unpaved roads. We also have black line, which you can't see very well, but those are the paved county roads that we're not really talking about tonight, but just the understanding that the commercial use permit and all these regulations would apply to those roads as well. And then to tie it all together, we also have a little bit of purple, which is BLM roads, but we have a lot of green roads, which are Forest Service roads as well. So Forest Service roads are also, for the most part, four-wheel drive roads that are linking together a lot of the other county roads. But we don't have any jurisdiction over Forest Service roads, right? You touch a Forest Service road commercially, that's a separate permitting process. Forest Service. So just for the layers we can toggle on and off, if you want to go out one. We have just kind of areas of reference for where the commercial operations are already taking place. So operators, I kind of made this disclaimer in the last meeting, but these aren't 100% accurate. They're just meant for reference right now. But we have summertime use, which is kind of concentrated on the east side commercially. And then we have several winter operations. right? And those are concentrated in two main areas. Where the group trail network is too. So Turquoise Lake, we have two operations, more or less, and then the east side, we have two operations, and then we also have White Mountains Highway 91 operation. You can see that the operations overlap in some parts. But you know, this is the commercial operation versus the entire road network of the county. Now, this was meant to analyze commercial use, private use, but also special events, right, which are that kind of middle ground. They're not existing commercial operations that happen every day of the year, but they're large impacts. They're large recreational impacts we have in our county, and they need to be considered if we're talking about recreational use in general. What we did is we were actually able to take the routes of all the special events that happen throughout the summer. And this isn't exhaustive. We would like to add to this, but we were able to take all the existing routes and map them as a heat map to show relatively what areas of the county have a lot of those special events in them each time, or you know, throughout the year. I think what really pops out to me is this is the CMC trail network down there south of Leadville, so we get a lot of winter events there. Makes sense to group trail network. You can see that the pipeline area is really well used by a lot of special events throughout the summer. And then if you go to the southern part of the county, which I don't want to now, but you'll see that, you know, the dam and Quail Mountain are really well used by most special events. There are a lot of special events in the county. So this is really good because I think if we're talking about recreation, we need to talk about the special events and how they fold in as well. We also wanted to kind of give the leadership tools to analyze that point A to point B discussion, right? What is a point B? I think that's an undefined term, but you know, there's some general rules that we kind of all can agree on. You know, trailheads throughout the county, probably a reasonable point B to get to. We also have some group camps, huts, yurts, things like that, fishing areas, the Mineral Belt Trail, hiking trails, Nordic ski trails, things like that. So those are on there, but I think what the conclusion we came to out of this discussion already is that the four-wheel drive roads themselves are a point B, right? They are a destination for people in and of themselves. And then, you know, we want to analyze winter use on its own as well. So the Green Snowmobile Trail Network can be popped up as well. You can see that it's kind of two separate areas in our county. We have the east side mining area, and we also have Turquoise Lake. Those group trails historically have been done by the local chapter of the Colorado Snowmobile Association, the High Rider Snowmobile Club. And then there's just the more land use specific things that you can look at. You can look at the Leadville 100 route, mountain biking and run on its own. You wanted to see that. CMC Winter Trail Network, Nordic Trails up at Ski Cooper. One big consideration on the east side though is that pretty much everything off of the county roads is private land, right? And there's a few big private landowners in there, like Newmont, right? So just to give you an idea of what Newmont's land holdings on the east side are. You are going through Newmont land pretty much no matter where you are on the east side. Newmont, Asarco, Resurrection, kind of the same entity for acquisitions. And then we're talking about county road, but you know, we can't have any discussion in this county without talking about the public land we have in this county, right? Which is about 78% of our total county land area. And so we have that as well to analyze on here to show not only are there Forest Service roads, but there's also a lot of Forest Service land, BLM land. If you touch those public lands, you're subject to that entity's permitting and their process and their vetting. Lake County actually has a lot of protected areas, so just wanted to emphasize that. Probably not a big deal for us because a lot of the OHVs are using roads that exist that don't go into these areas, but they are there for discussion. You know, we have wilderness areas, congressionally designated, but we also have congressionally designated roadless areas in the county too. And so those cover a lot of interesting places, like a lot of Mount Zion, a lot of the stuff up towards Homestake, a lot of the stuff kind of going down towards Weston Pass. And then BLM has its own little designated area, which is called the BLM Area of Critical Environmental Concern. And so most of this is in Weld County, but we do have a portion that hangs over our side of the Mosquito Crest into Lake County. And this has been identified by the BLM as kind of an area that's in need of special protections. And from what we've heard, it's mostly because they're just identified links out of it.
BLM said that their new management plan is coming out in January and that is going to be expanded.
This is the minimum area apparently, and it'll be expanding in the future, but just an idea, we have multiple public lands jurisdictions and entities that have their own concerns and have designated certain areas of the county for protection. We have backcountry zoning, a new zone district that went through in 2022 with the intent of kind of limiting impact in that area and land conservation and things like that. So that's on there. It's in the blue outline now, but you can see it's a large portion of the county, including a lot of that public land. But the zone district specifically is dealing with the private parcels within these districts, just to clarify. And then, the two districts that are kind of the most discussed when we're in this discussion are the industrial mining zoning and the backcountry together. So just kind of laying that out. And if you start adding all these things together, it gives you a good idea of, considerations that leadership should have when they're talking about OHVs. We have a lot of land in this county that's already, these are private lands under conservation. So conservation easements or some other type of protection. So private lands though, that have been entered into some sort of protection. And then we have just other ones that, are maybe interesting to you, like the water plan. This is where we have that water with our plan. We have transmission lines. Board of County Commissioners, land ownership, which is a really interesting one. And some other interesting overlay districts we have within our zoning code that just kind of show scenic conservation considerations and airport protection and conservation or overlay, but this one's not really relevant to OHV, more to like buildings and construction. So yeah, that's just kind of a brief overview. Like I said, this map is designed to be interactive, and so it's really best used with your mouse on your computer, toggling off and toggling on some of these layers to look at specific pieces of information you're looking for. And then, me and Tristan are always open to new data. We want more considerations to spatially, put on here, so there's a good visual so they can go on and further inform the discussion. So we're always open to new data sets and to new considerations of visual things to put on the map. Yeah.
I see that the race series is limited to just 100. I believe the race series is 6 different races.
Correct. So all those race series events are actually within the special heat map. We just wanted to specifically, and I have those separated that I can put on here just to declutter. We kind of limited that to just the heat map plus the two big ones, the 100 run and the 100 bikers. But yes, in fact, this map was considered with the Silver Rush 50, the trail marathon, and those kind of events too. Absolutely. And we want to get every event possible on this event.
Question, how did you configure, consider those as the heat spots? How did you calculate all that? Fast.
We just took every single route, the individual route. And so this doesn't consider that there's 1,700 mountain bikers, right? This is just saying that there's one mountain bike race, one run. So it doesn't consider the quantity of use per users. It's just showing the impact of the routes themselves. And so what we did is we layered on every single route. And in GIS world, we converted those line classes into a point class, which allowed us to create a heat map of relative use.
And how far does that go back?
This is the most current data we could find. So this is
like from the beginning of the race, when it first started, did you configure all the?
Nope, this is just the most recent data. So like 2023.
Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, just using the most recent race routes we could find from the trail series, and everything else.
So going forward, that's kind of, you're going to look at the most recent.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, we have to look at most recent just because that's where the impacts are.
Got it.
Okay.
What's the plan to how long will this be analyzed before decisions are made? So I'm sure that really we don't know.
This is kind of a work in progress, but we've had more or less this data ready for several weeks, and so it's been informing the conversation for a little while. But it's meant to exist in perpetuity for for not only this discussion, but going forward for new special events that are proposed in our county. And new commercial operations that might move in or want to operate in our county after the moratorium is over.
May I ask, do you feel like those heat, that they're at maximum levels you're showing us right now? The maximum capacity for like the race, I mean, are you gonna let the race? I mean, what's the,
This is a tool meant for, I'm not a decision maker, right? This is just a tool to inform. And to really visualize these things, which I think we're all aware of, but it's really nice to compile it into one visual source.
no, I hope it, it keeps growing, I do.
Yeah,
And seeing those bright red spots is giving me a visual.
and one thing we're gonna add to this that we don't have currently is we're gonna add, one big consideration we have is our 14ers and how much of a draw that is in our county. And so we've actually reached out to the Colorado 14ers initially because we've heard that they have usage data that we could then create a separate heat map. It's not gonna be in the special event because it's separate use, but there will be more data added to this, and one of those examples would be 14er use.
So with the backcountry zone. As a land use, seasonal be permitted in, there's a section, you guys will be discussing the new backcountry zoning, what will be permitted in that zone.
What will be permitted in the backcountry zoning? Right. So there's a table of uses. I can't say specifically. Veteran guide isn't allowed use in the backcountry zone. It's on the, or is it not? Sorry. I'm trying to remember myself, but it's more to emphasize. I mean, I know that wasn't the intent to encourage commercial operations in this area. It was more just that the commercial operations that was in this area will be much more highly vetted for environmental concerns and things like that.
I just want to comment one more time on this map. I hope that we're gonna consider historical, impact that's, been there for forever, kind of like the mine. I mean, if you're, especially with the A and the B, I mean, how are you gonna configure, that impact and show, high usage, high usage. But I'm concerned about, how this is, taken just this past year, correct? To come up with these heat spots. And I'm just curious how you're gonna configure all that without, looking at historical use.
Are you suggesting that like the prior impacts need to be allocated and associated to the historic use? And I guess if that's what I'm understanding you to say, I wonder how, I don't know how we can mitigate that impact from before, but we can create those regulations or those considerations now to now mitigate the impacts across all seasons. Again, all that is going to be very different too, and very hard to consider, but I think this is based on, I think the harder, more specific conversations are intended to be had in the permitting commercial recreation permit that we're calling. We had talked about it as a special use permit that we were creating. I think we're going to name it a commercial recreation permit. And so that will take consideration what exactly that route looks like.
Right, and what I would just say is that what we as staff are doing are creating tools and processes to inform, to help the decision makers make informed decisions. So these tools are meant when an ask comes before them, that they can analyze and consider what is currently occurring in the county and what additional impact additional use might do. Do we already have areas that we have a high degree of use? What would it mean to bring in something new and introduce something new into the community? So these, what we're as staff doing are not bringing forth anything at this point that is making any decisions. These are tools that we will get to the decision makers to help them be better informed in future decisions. With that.
That helps, but my thoughts are, so in other words, you're taking the current time right now.
Absolutely.
And we're moving forward.
Yes.
Okay, then I'm okay with that. But, you know, I also, you know, I'm trying to figure out how you guys are coming up with, you know, these areas of being, you know, high impact to low impact.
This doesn't say that it's high impact or low impact.
Right.
This layer here doesn't say it's high impact or low impact, it just says the frequency of use.
Okay,
Right, so it doesn't differentiate between a running race or a biking race or an OHV ride, or it just is saying these are the special event permits and also routes. I think that we
Yeah, so
understand
take that
to be used.
It's frequency of use of the route, not necessarily frequency of that route. And like I said, it's not counting that there's 1,700 mountain bikers versus this many runners or whatever it might be. It's just that the mountain biking race and the running race both use this same area of the county. Right, and so they go see those impacts during those events.
okay.
But I just want to move on to the other back.
Yeah, I think two points. I think when you said heat map, to a lot of people, that means that the brighter the color, the more full the heat map would typically be GIS to show usage or volume or something like that. And on that, do you have data associated at certain points or certain types of trails? Daily counts, seasonal counts, using type, how many people used it on a snowmobile or a mountain bike at a given point?
This is the best we got for the special events, but we're currently seeking more data, right? Like,
Does the county actively or have they done any type of trail counts for use?
I don't believe the county has, no. And that would be probably on the Forest Service side of things. Or through, you know, the nonprofit entities like the Colorado 14ers Initiative that we just actually recently heard that they were doing that kind of intensive data collection. And so that's what we're looking for, is better data. That's also something that we've kind of been looking for in the special events themselves, is just to be more clear about, you know, kind of the use and everything like that, and just to be much more explicit in their permitting. For the degree of use that's being used, not just.
I used to, in college, I had to do trail counts. Sitting in a minivan with the county, counting how many people walk, snowshoe, cross-country ski by, and stuff like that. It's valuable for this type of thing.
Yeah, and I think Ann will get into a little bit more about kind of some of the ideas we have on how to quantify use and how to separate out private use versus commercial use, and just give ourselves more data to make those more informed decisions and to have a better idea. But you know, we're at the starting point now, so.
Is there
I'm so sorry to.
that we put together, which will be a use? Is there a way that we can figure out what areas might be open for us expanding trail networks for motorized use? You know, the writing's kind of on the wall. A lot of user groups are gonna lose access to a lot of areas. It's not the 90s up here anywhere. You can't just grab wherever you want, as much as I wish we could, you can't. So, you know, is there any plans, any ideas, anything the county has thought of at all about adding more areas where we can build more trails? We get groups together, get some shovels out. I mean, look at what the Wheelers have done, you know, with mountain biking. And I think there's enough people up here passionate about motorized use that if there's areas we can work with, we'll make it happen.
I don't know if we've done that work yet, but I mean, that's absolutely something we want to look at, right? This is all part of this process. I feel like we're at the beginning, where these are great questions, but we're kind of at the beginning of talking about that. How do we, you know, I think like Ann was saying, there was kind of an agreement that we were in balance, or at least there wasn't enough. We weren't out of balance enough to cause the county to come in and make these regulations or rethink things. But now that we're making these decisions, and now that we're thinking about balance and knowing that the motorized users are gonna, you know, they already have a limited trail network, and if we take something away, then how do we give back or whatever? It's really just about beginning that discussion of what is balance. And yeah, I mean, how do we accommodate all users and also prevent user conflict?
But you're telling us that you're really close to a vote coming up next weekend, is that correct?
That's the intention.
Yeah, so doesn't sound like.
Does it feel like limited data to push through the ordinance?
I mean,
That is something that the board is
discussing, yeah, yeah.
Talking
I
about a
mean,
year of data. That doesn't seem like a full scope of the range of a calendar year to get accurate data, does it?
So yeah.
Yes.
answer that. So we are at a starting point. And we have to design tools to be able to have that data collection. So you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. We had more work has to be done, but we have to have a starting point. We have to have a starting point so that we have something that's measurable. And that we can have that data collection so that we can drive that work into answering those questions for you.
But
So
is
do
an
we
ordinance-
have all of that yet? No.
But is an ordinance the right starting point?
yeah, I mean, yeah,
That's
it is the
question.
only
Is an
tool
ordinance the
right
right
now.
starting point?
It is
there
the
enough data there?
tool that we have to leverage and set some parameters while we monitor impacts and all of those things.
Will the ordinance be revisited? Wow,
Yeah,
maybe
that's
being
this
collected?
process. Yeah, I mean, well, maybe, maybe not, maybe it'll be revisited for either way, we have to see what the impacts are. And to
So-
your comment, Andy, go ahead, no, go ahead.
So I would just say the ordinance right now, where we're at and we will be giving a list of kind of a menu of options to the board right now. You know, one of those things that's going into the ordinance is the permitting process for Houston County roads. One of the things that's going into the ordinance is that the enforcement portion in review by the sheriff is really disjointed, and we got that in public feedback too. And so we need to clean up that. So the ordinance right now does need to be clear. We need clarity in that. And if we're going to introduce a new process, then it's time to update that ordinance at this junction in the work. Eventually, with more information and more legislative process and decision making, there may be room for another iteration of the ordinance. But right now, there is a need for it because if the board does decide to bring this permitting process into place, it doesn't live in the ordinance right now. So it would need to be there in order for them to start using the permitting process as a tool. So it would be kind of think of it maybe as an incremental change, an update, and that the ordinance may have to adjust to meet the findings as they occur and as emerging trends and as the need arises. So I would just say that, yes, the ordinance is a meaningful part of this work, but there may be times when it has to be adjusted to meet the desired outcomes.
Can I comment on Andy's question about other thoughts on OHV specific areas, use areas? I mean, everyone probably knows we have a motocross track. But also, I mean, right now, any county land that we have is really being dedicated and prioritized for housing. And so I don't know, I think that's, or it's like up in a environmentally fragile place. It's certainly something that we've talked about looking at, but I think certainly would need some feedback from all of you on what that even looks like. What's attractive? Like what kind of length of trail network or are you talking about to try to promote and help create something different? And I mean, personally, I think the best area for that for private or public non-commercial users is Forest Service motorized roads and where that's allowed. Maybe the Forest Service will yell at me for saying it.
I would say just leave it alone because the riding areas right now are great. So, you know, I think we're all in favor of just letting us ride what we ride already.
Well, and are you okay, so are you talking about like bicycle motor bike riding or?
Because
Everything, kind of how I see it.
Because I don't think there's any legal motorbike trails in the county. And
Legal.
the last effort, legal, the last effort to expand motorized use was play steward with the snowmobile club to ask permission for the county to groom the county roads. To add to the facilities for OHV use or snowmobile use. Kevin?
Actually, a lot of the motorcycle riders, we pay for license plates, we have signal lights, we have horns, we have spark arresters, they're legal on these roads, so
They,
it
yes,
sounds
I
like
have
the county,
only a lot
it
about-
sounds like the county has a preordained idea to restrict these things, and you've done a minimal amount of research to cover your butts. And everybody in this room is shaking their heads no, Sarah, no. Am I wrong?
So I'm not sure where we jumped from these questions to that like interpretation. Like, let's unpack that a little bit.
Well, this is the first time it's been brought up in 30 some years, that's why. Yeah, and then to top it off, it's been talked about 35 years ago between Lake County and Eagle County. This process happened.
We're gonna think. Let's talk about specifics of, because I think that there has been a tipping point. And why we're here in this room talking today. And I don't know that it's individual users. I think it came upon from commercial use.
It did.
And the attraction or the attention that brought to the conversation.
Can we hear the facts?
Okay, yeah, I'd be happy to kind of step in just a little bit and say that the work and the scope of work right now for public-private users. We're not looking to change the ordinance from point A to point B. We're not trying to disallow any type of use, recreational use, through this scope of work for private/public users. Specifically. That's not, that has never been put part of the discussion yet, to look at that. So I just want to make sure that we're talking about county roads, and as far as the private and public part of the ordinance, the only two changes are that we are creating youth programming to help educate local youth. And the other aspect is a road use guide, because eventually, we'll get to this in just a moment, is a sticker program where you can register locally at a very nominal cost. So we can have data and degree of use, and we know who the users are, and we can pass out one of those maps. And we just say, welcome, here you go, you've registered in Lake County, I don't know, $5-10. And now we have a data set, right? Now we know who our users are. But we have a different probably premium for anybody that comes in from out of county, and we'll get to that in just a little bit, but we just want to kind of take a step back, because I think we might be going in to an area of assumed work that their staff hasn't been commissioned with. So as far as public-private users, we are not looking to bring a recommendation forward. We haven't been asked by the board to bring forward a recommendation for restricting any type of private or public use.
Just real quick.
May I speak?
Is there gonna be any differentiating between OHV usage besides private and commercial? Like, in like Rampart Range, they've got, 50-inch widths and down to single track, that like basically.
Different types of equipment
Yeah, like
for private,
single
for
track
private use.
riders don't wanna be lumped in with UTV guys, because then we're all kind of pigeonholed into this one group, and it's really a pretty diverse OHV group in this county.
I think thank you for that, and I think that is something that as staff, we will acknowledge, and we will bring those forth as discussion points for the board. So I think that's perfect. Thank you. Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. And I don't want to cut anybody off. I just want to make sure that we don't start going in a direction that isn't really the scope of work that we've been commissioned with so far. So is that any questions before we kind of move on a little bit? I am gonna try to hold some questions to the end so we can get through the presentation, but if you wanna do it right now, it's okay.
It's fitting. If we limit commercial use and people are buying a permit coming up here from who the heck knows where, who's gonna handle people getting stuck, people getting lost, and people wrecking machinery?
Oh, absolutely. No, I would say that, I've heard, I think from a lot of the operators here that they come to the rescue a lot for, and, you know, I think it was one of the talking points. Hey, local operators are the good players. The problems that the county has or that we're experiencing are the unskilled riders that come in with their rental equipment. They don't know the lay of the land, they don't know how to operate here. A lot of times you guys end up coming to the rescue, right? So I do think that that's something that we need to be very aware of. And that again is that type of program so that we can identify, and I talked to some of the operators about helping us create a mailing list for the rental companies that we know that are outside of the area that are really, that we're seeing that influx coming in so that we can communicate with them and that they need to know that their fleets have to be registered. And we can start having those dialogues with those rental companies. And so that they know that Lake County has rules and that, and they make it tougher because of the degree of use and impact that that's happening on us. But we have to have a way to start measuring that. I think that there's a concern that we're making regulations without the good data to do that. But this is the starting point where we are looking to create that so that we don't make informed, so that we make informed decisions moving forward.
This is, you know, to be on that. Will there be a differentiation between commercial use being like rental companies and commercial use being like guide companies?
Commercial, okay, so let me new act.
Yeah, so if you're, it sounds like commercial use is just such a vague term when there's
Sure.
rental companies out there, there's guide companies out there. So I'm just wondering if there's gonna be a differentiation between the two.
Okay, so a great question. So the city of Leadville, we have, this work started together and we talked about that. And so they have a moratorium on allowing any rental right within the city. And so I think that we would continue to look at moving forward with commercial being outfitting and guiding. We recognize the staff and we'll be providing that in our report that outfitting and guiding commercial operations have a heightened level of safety associated with it inherently, right? And so you're absolutely right. When we're talking about commercial, I should be specifically saying outfitting and guiding. So thank you for kind of put that on.
Can you put that distinction on the list though, Reynolds?
Sure, absolutely.
And we do have a question online.
Okay. And then I'm gonna take one last question, let's see if we can get through the presentation, because at the end, all we have is but time for questions, so.
And Q team, you can unmute and ask your question.
Hey, can you guys hear me? Hello?
We cannot hear you.
I don't know what to say. I tried to talk. Hello? Can you guys hear me?
Could you put in the chat?
Yeah. But we can hold it if you want to see.
Okay, if everybody's okay with that, because I'm sure we can get through the presentation and then absolutely, the whole evening is yours. Up to a third stopping point for all of this, to give us feedback on this. So, Bryce has talked about the roadway use guide, youth education and outreach. I really kind of talked about that just a little bit. We have partnered with pros to work on that, and so there is going to be dedicated effort put into designing that. We also have a remarkable OHV track, a very coveted OHV track. And so, we've got a great amenity and tool that we can use to support that. Enforcement, I'm gonna be kind of brief because, Keith is not here, to talk about this, but I think I've already kind of talked about that a little bit. The existing ordinance is choppy, doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because it kind of chicken plucks out different rules of the road. And so now he's going to go through and make it more consistent. The other thing that I would say is that we have a strong, dedication from law enforcement to, you know, really work to make this enforceable and to address concerns that we heard from the public about noise and unsafe, youth and just different, more of on a private user side, people trespassing on residential property, just different issues. So law enforcement is making a commitment to be more active in the enforcement of the ordinance. I think we heard that. And I think that Keith really has heard that too, and feels that the sheriff has a strong dedication to working on strengthening the ordinance and then enforcing the ordinance. Okay, so let's get to the commercial recreation. This is the application information so we have proposed. Community Planning and Development has created a process by which the any commercial user would apply to Lake County for a commercial recreational use permit to operate if their course is part of a county road network. And the things that we will be asking for in the application are: what's the route and what type of business? What are the hours and days of operation? What's the proposed trip volume? How many employees and what are their qualifications? What's the address of the base of operations? Why is that important? Because we heard and we agreed that that operators should be local. Outfitting and guiding should be participating in the local economy. And so the ordinance already says you must have a base of operation in the city or the county to be an outfitter or a guide in Lake County. So your address of base of operations, the effects on public services, fire, service, emergency management. This really honestly goes right in sync with your emergency management plan. We want to know, like, obviously a lot of the current use has been here for a very long time. And I'm sure that they can probably bring forth some best practices about how you manage and set the bar. Also, just an impact mitigation plan. And I would imagine these are normal operating. I don't want to assume, but I would imagine they're probably customary for any O&G operation. So those are the submittal requirements that we're asking from the application. These are the standards. Again, you have to have a base of operations in the city or the county. You have to maintain liability insurance. I'm sure that's not a problem. And there are statutory noise requirements in residential areas. And you have to be compliant with the OHB ordinance. And then once you submit your application, what happens? Once you submit your application, whether it's community planning and development or Parks, Rec, and Open Space that eventually processes these for the board, we would go through, you submit your application, we do a completeness review, and then we refer it out. We have a public hearing process. And at the end of that public hearing process, the board acts on the permit. And that action can be to approve the conditions, or deny. And then there is an enforcement and review process built in. I think this is very concerning to a lot of people. And I want to talk just a little bit about it. And I want to preface this with I'm certainly not an attorney, but I want to say that the enforcement and review process is that's being proposed has a public hearing process with it. So I have changed in the staff report to say if there was a reasonable cause, what's a reasonable cause to have an enforcement action? A reasonable cause as defined and being proposed by staff is that you violated either the permit itself and the conditions of the permit, or you violated the ordinance. Or there's a reasonable cause to believe that has happened, isn't predetermined because you go through a due process public hearing process. So if you were a holder of one of these permits and a complaint came forward, well, first of all, was it a violation of the permit? Was it a violation of the ordinance? Okay. Those, it can't be the grumpy neighbor that just doesn't like someone. Or there's a predetermined notion about someone that if we raise enough complaints, maybe we can get their permit revoked. It has to have, first of all, was it a violation of the permit or was it a violation of the ordinance? If there's a reasonable cause to believe that's true, then it goes through a quasi judicial process where the permit holder has the ability to bring evidence and testimony onto the record. And those decisions then might result in a suspension of that permit, and then eventually maybe a revocation. Those are possible outcomes, but not without a due process, public hearing process to do that. This is not unlike pretty much every land use application, every conditional use permit, every short-term rental license, every kind of other. So this is like a standard process that's being suggested by staff as how would you manage the permits? So you create them. What would you ask for? How do you decide? And then how do you enforce them? And so that's really kind of, my staff report goes probably into a lot more detail. I'm happy to give that to you. But that's really kind of the overview. Now, as many questions as you can load on us, happy to, Commissioner Mudge is here, Commissioner Fiedler's here, Bryce is here, I'm here. So any questions that you have for any of us, we're happy to. Yes, ma'am. So is the county still pursuing a carry capacity study this coming season? So a carrying capacity study, and I would love to defer to pros, but I will tell you this, and if Adam has any information, I'm happy to let him share that as well. This season would be very ambitious, a study. So the Forest Service, when they go through a carrying capacity study, it's a NEPA study, it's a very in-depth study, and so if a carrying capacity study, and let me first say what it is. Sorry, thank you for saying that. That is basically an impact study to decide, like, where are we at? What can we sustain? Should there be a cap on the amount of new operations that come into the county? Are we, right now we have 4 commercial operators in Lake County. Can we sustain any more? That's kind of like what we're saying, like, maybe it's time for us to look at a impact study and a capacity study to determine whether or not, and just give us an informed approach to thinking to give the tools to the decision makers to make some informed decisions. But that study takes time. It's not going to be something that can be done in like 3 to 6 months or before the end of the year. It's going to take a longer period of time, but is it something that we're going to recommend? 100%. We're going to recommend that the county look at considering investing in an impact study. We talked a little about it, and so CPD is going to recommend it. And I don't know, Adam, do you want to? Don't need to put you on spot. Do you want to? We can wait for another time if you want.
Yeah, I mean, I think it certainly takes a little bit of time to develop, and I wouldn't see that happening in the time program into this year. But we have partners here at the college and around to help us develop that. Spring. I think we just started talking about what level of monitoring would be appropriate.
Going to be used to limit use in the future to the current outfitters.
I see that as being a reason for doing a study is just to gain the best possible information. for what this is. I wouldn't have
Guys, I can't hear.
But to build that stuff.
And I want to go back to Ting online.
Sure.
Ting, can you hear us?
Okay. Peter, did you have?
Well, I just wondered, when do you expect to be able to issue your personal police permit or commercial guide permit? What's the timetable for actually issuing one?
So, these are our recommendations.
I'm trying to be quiet.
For the tools and resources. So once they become available, we'll also talk about a time for implementation. We understand that we need to take into account, we've kind of already asked, but understand that it was a very complex question about how would the current commercial user businesses, what would be good for implementation. And we've heard everything from let's just get it done to we'd like to wait into the following season, whatever their season is. So that'll be kind of a decision for decision makers on the actual implementation. But we have been asking the businesses what they think about what is a reasonable amount of time to come into compliance. Great question. Yes.
Is there like a staff report that has a formal list of possible complaints and maybe organizations that are bringing forth that would like to see new changes so we can identify, I guess, maybe those issues and vet the right ones and get a good look at, what that is?
Sure, we do have public comment we've had the feedback form online, and we can certainly make, I believe that is that all that feedback available. So it is available on our website.
Oh, it's not. I can
Like
share it.
information that you
Okay.
guys got, I guess, come to this point,
Yes.
prior to these meetings.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We've got all of the public feedback. We've collected everything that everybody sent in to us, and we've compiled that. And so I think that we've got the feedback on form, but we'll make sure that that compilation of all of the comment is available.
Hey, Ann, can you hear me? Hello? Hello?
I
Can you
think you
guys
said you
hear
have
me?
a hard copy report that you're gonna be handing into the board. I don't necessarily need to see it right now, because there's a bunch of people here. You said you didn't expect this many people. A lot of people are here, a lot of people are concerned. Kind of elephant in the room was already said. Commercial businesses are what's driving this. In a few quick words, you give us just kind of a little just a couple points of what you guys are going to recommend to that board.
Recommend, okay, so let me make sure I'm giving a meaningful answer. So right now, this is what we're recommending, is just this process. This is the process that we are suggesting would be, because we were commissioned with find a way for the county to have some oversight on what's happening on the county roads on a commercial business. Let us be able to measure it. Let's make sure that everybody, that there aren't any sort of concerns. So we have an idea of what is the degree of use. We can better inform our road use guide. We can better consider next future use. So that's our recommendation right now. But I think maybe you're saying that if you applied, what would you recommend to the board at that point?
Well, are they voting to instate this commercial recreation permit? Okay, and so you're basically telling them that, hey, here is all the information. That's what's happening.
Yes, all we are giving them are the tools to have an application process and a basis, and then a way to if need be, enforce that. So what are we gonna ask for in the application, provided that, you know, and then there is more in the staff report. I think some of the concerns, and let me speak to this one really quick, because I know that this is a concern. We looked at a model, we looked at the Forest Service model a lot. We met with them, and really kind of looked at how they go about their special use permitting. And because that doesn't make with them, but Forest Service permits, and they do kind of, they have kind of a probationary period, and then they do like a merit-based increase. And so that is something that we've included. And I think that there's concerns about that, because obviously that has an impact to your business operations. But you have to review it. But I would suggest again, that if you're operating, as you stated in your application, and you're operating consistent with permit and operating consistent with the ordinance, then the likelihood of being able to come in and get that longer merit-based permit exists. And that's what staff wants to, that's the tool that we want to give them, is that we should be able to consider potentially the ability to have longer terms and recognize, and we've emphasized to the board what an impact that has on commercial operations. And so those lengths of permits are really important factors. But that's what it's modeled out.
Would a Forest Service permit that's been continual for over 25 years have any sort of kind of leeway or kind of a bigger value to the county? Is that something that we can kind of build into that, instead of somebody who's newer or less established or hasn't been in compliance with those permits for as long?
So I'm gonna hypothetically, you're gonna hypothetically, right? Hypothetically, if I would hypothetically, I would say yes. Yes, a good track record speaks exactly to what the process wants to do, right? Process is trying to decide if there are problems in the use, if there's unsafe practices, if you're operating outside of what you said you were gonna do, then let's readjust. We can't readjust. But if you've got to have a great track, if hypothetically a company's had a 25-year amazing track record, put that in your application. Tell the board, tell them that's certainly something that you have, whether it's pros or CPD is going to lift up, and we're going to talk to, you know, that permit holder, and they're going to say, great, yeah, we've never had a problem, and they've had this long existing permit. That'll be evidence on the record for your hearing. So your decisions will be made on the evidence on the record in your application. So if you've got something, if you go into the application process and the hearing process, and you have that, that's pretty strong evidence on the record.
Thank you.
Hello, can you guys hear me? Hi. Hello.
There's
Yes, team, we can hear you.
Oh, hi. Great. Thank you. So I just have a few comments to make regarding the proposed permitting process, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, so here's a few thoughts. So I know we discussed that we've been having this conversation since last year, well over a year ago. And since the beginning, we have discussed multiple times regarding yes, we don't want to shut down local businesses. However, we do want to you know, limit out of town commercial users that's quote taking advantage of the Lake County resources. However, I don't see any process being put in place in order to limit so-called concerning out-of-town commercial use with this current conditional use or special use permitting process. Sounds like it's only limiting or restricting local commercial outfitters, which according to the board, it's not the intention. However, it sounds like even though we have to comply with the current permitting process, the out-of-town commercial users can still do whatever they want. Now with the sticker system, things might change, but is there any certain logic behind why we want to limit the current outfitters within the county who has been playing, participating in the local economy and being a good partner, rather than actually addressing the big issue that everyone are concerning about the out of the town outfitters? So that's the first question. The second question regarding official complaints or official inputs, I did read through the whole inputs provided by the public to the staff regarding OHVs, and to be honest, I struggle to find real complaints regarding commercial outfitters. Locally, especially, seems like people do have mixed feelings about OHV, which I totally understand, but there's no solid proof, evidence of any kind saying commercial outfitter XYZ are causing issue, or trespassing, or having dangerous behavior. I have not seen any proof from anywhere regarding that. So my next question is, why is the county addressing the commercial outfitter, again, local commercial outfitter that the county claimed they don't want to impact, and versus rather addressing other concerns about the out-of-town commercial outfitters, and where are the actual grounds and bases or police report or complaints against these local commercial outfitters, because I'm really not aware of any.
Thank you, team. Thank you. I think first thing, and I think maybe just I think you're referring to outfitters, not outfitter guys, because obviously in the ordinance and throughout we are leveling that with, you have to have a base of operations in the county. So I'm just going to assume that you mean that rental companies. So I would say within, happy to provide you maybe with, certainly staff has brought in concerns from everything from damage to groomed trails and causing unsafe conditions to a variety of complaints that we've received.
Okay, and regarding that, I do want to follow up on that. Sorry to interrupt, but I would love to see actual study been done and proof regarding damaging groomed trails. And like I'm really not aware of any damage caused by the tracked vehicles. I know it's a broadly spread misunderstanding regarding tracked vehicles damaging groomed trails. However, there's no proof. Like, where's the proof from? Like, is there a video of a tracked vehicle driving by and suddenly the perfectly groomed trails turn into terrible condition? Because that's not from what I can see. And, we do tours like that every single day, and that's not the truth.
Thank you. I do think that you feel like there's a tone to this, that this is a punitive type of approach, and it's not meant to be that. It's meant to be an ability, and in part, the tools that we are providing are a way for everything that I'm hearing from all of you that you want. You want the ability for us to measure the degree of use, be able to give you factual data about the degree of use, and whether or not the Lake County can sustain any future use, any future businesses that are coming in. And so I do think that we're not trying, we as staff, we have received concerns about different activities that have alleged, I'm happy to say that team that have alleged that this has created unsafe conditions. And so this is not meant to be a punitive approach, this is meant to be a way in which to create the tools to give to the board through a transparent and hearing process, for which each of you have your own individual opportunity to bring forth the very best application and evidence to suggest that the manner in which you want to operate is safe, that it's not an overly, an excessive degree of use, and that it's sustainable, and that you've mitigated impacts, and that you have a great emergency management plan. And if that's the evidence that you can bring forward on the record, and then there is a process to gain a permit to be able to operate. And then at the end of that, we as Lake County have the ability to start creating that data collection to determine what is sustainable and appropriate for future use. So I totally hear what you're saying. And I do think that, again, we are going to put effort into, already we've got with the ordinance, we have to have a local base of operation. But the SIGGR program, we're going to reach out to those rental companies, and we're going to start working on how do we consider that those rental companies and the impacts from them. We need to start realizing where those machines are. The SIGGR program will help us collect where that use is coming from, and then again give us the ability to better decide how to manage that. I don't think anybody's disagreeing. I think collectively, and staff is lifting up to the board, and I think that they've already really realized that, yes, and I think we talked about that early when we started talking about this, that you could have unskilled folks in the county not knowing the lay of the land, and the burden is coming on you, but you're out in the field to rescue those folks. We hear that, and I think that that is definitely good information that we need to take away, and we need to determine how can we better manage that. Yes.
So are these rental companies gonna have to also apply for permits, or are you gonna just reaching out to them saying that you have any rules?
They will have to permit their staff. They're not asking to guide on county roads.
Right, but so that they can just bring in a rental, and how do you guys like mitigate that? Like they're just out there thinking rentals.
So right now we have a moratorium in the city, no more rental companies locally. And I think that that's a future part of the work that we're gonna have to do. So are we diminishing the amount of unskilled, not knowing the area, not being guided locally? Maybe tonight we hear strongly from you that we should make a recommendation to the board that they commission us to say, how do we better regulate that?
Yeah, because I mean, if you guys think about the complaints, like, are these complaints coming from guide companies, or are they coming from people on rental companies? Like that's really important to know.
And I would say these regulations are not coming in part because of punitive, because well, the comments that we've heard, that you're the good players. You have a vested interest in doing it right. Your liability is on the line every time you gotta do it. So, but we have to start measuring the degree of use and the impact of that to better inform better decision making in the future.
Hey, Anne?
And I'm sorry, Ting, we've had a question online from Michael. And then we'll move on to some others in the room and then come back to you, Ting. But Michael, if you'd like to ask your question. Is Michael still online?
Oh, we have one.
Okay, I'm going to read Michael's question. So Michael, what are the objective metrics used to determine a sustainable level of use and an appropriate emergency management program?
I'm sorry, but what are the objective measurement units used to determine a sustainable level of use and appropriate can you read it? So we certainly have other we have examples. A lot of people will go to companies that design their emergency management plan. And so if you want to work with us one-on-one as staff, we're happy to provide some emergency management plan examples. Sometimes, and I imagine some of the businesses in the office have, or in the room, maybe have engaged with someone to help them with their emergency management planning. But we also have the County Office of Emergency Management. We have resources in the county to assist you. If you are going through the application process and you need guidance on putting together an application, Lake County has resources. We have a Department of Emergency Management. These plans are kind of standard based on different operations. So we're happy to, as staff, if you want to reach out to us at any point in time, if you're trying to design one of those, we can help you find resources, or we can talk to you further about that. And I think what we're talking about right now is creating the baseline to create those matrix in order to make more informed decisions in the future about sustainability. But this is the baseline, and this is the starting point. This isn't, we're not determining right now, or that what staff is bringing forward for the decision makers is the process by which to initiate that data collection and measuring that use.
And can I also add that I mean, similar to other land use processes, this is the process, the applicant brings that to community planning and development. You talk through that, and that is not something that can really be outlined and exhausted by staff, because every case can be so different. So that's for the applicant to bring, and to have the conversation with you to develop that application.
Absolutely. We don't develop the plan for you. We review your plan, make sure it's adequate, but we do provide resources on how to obtain those. We can always, we can be the source for the source. We won't do it for you or suggest what you should have, but we can give you the resources to be able to give those. We can give you examples, and we can lead you to resources.
But also in terms of the permit, and like any land use permit and the comprehensive plan question, the questions that we have of on, you know, in harmony with neighboring uses or traffic, or you know, some impacts on, it's not gonna overburden the land. Like, those are the kinds of things that you would consider.
Absolutely.
As you're including that in your application.
Absolutely. We have a checklist. If you I'll wait one moment. We have a checklist. We provide as staff as much guidance as we can on preparing an application. So we do have this checklist to kind of help drive, so you can better understand what you should have in an application. And we can always be the source for the source, but we don't. I mean, you know, obviously we're not gonna create plans for you, but we give you great guidance on what you should need, what the should be included in your application. It's called an application checklist. We have them for every process, and we'll have them for this as well.
Yes, and the Forest Service, I mean, operating plans are standard for the Forest Service as well, so I'm not certain what outline or template there is there to go by, but that's another good resource to look into.
Yeah, that's a great resource. Forest Service models we've used those within the work too. So, yes, sir.
So, when you guys are, I guess, before you're voting, are you gonna be looking at an economic impact that each of the use brings to the county? Because it exponentially goes out in multiple ways to restaurants, to lodging. A lot of us support our families and have for a number of years. So any restrictions would have a big impact, and actually could, I guess, people coming here to visit might not come here to visit. They don't have these options.
I mean, a very great point. I think well said, and I would say put that in your application.
And we have a question online. Tom, if you'd like to come off mute.
That's very great.
Tom Phillips.
Hi, Tom.
Never mind.
There is a lady, I think in the back, she's still here, did she leave, just give up? Oh, darn. I'm so sorry. Okay, Madison, I'm sorry. White Mountain Snowmobile Tours has been established since 1991. For over 30 years, White Mountain has been a local business within our community. Madison, just one moment. The only thing that I want to be careful about, and I'm going to explain why. I'm just going to be, the only thing that I just really want to be careful this evening about is talking, like giving us your application this evening. Because we do have a due process, and so if we start talking specifically about your operation, we run the risk of you not being able to have a public hearing that Sarah can participate, Jeff can participate in, and then what do we do? So I totally want to, there's so much merit in what you have to say, that Madison, but even just kind of hypothetical, because if it's information, this isn't about the permit, this is what we're requesting.
How much negative, you know,
Okay,
so this is pretty positive. I mean,
okay, I just, yeah, as long as it's not like specific to, and I'm not trying to shut you down, I promise you. I want to make sure that when you have it, this is the county, so we just want to share it in a public setting, because we shared it this part. Okay. Okay, is Chris Boyd, I just want to make sure that I preserve your opportunity to have your permit. If you don't want us to speak. No, you go right ahead. No, that's fine. I'm trying to.
we really want to work with the county.
Go ahead.
So this is Chris. There's no problem with making public comment, and you can make your public comment about your business and such. To my knowledge, there's no application pending at this point in time. So I think what it is we want to make sure that there's no impression that anything that staff or the county is doing in regards to this potential regulation of commercial operators is intended to be targeted at one operation or other. This is where, the county's worked very hard over the last year to try to find some balance among all users of its recreational assets. So I think what Ann's trying to get at is we just want to make sure that things don't get so focused on specific operations that there's the potential lose sight of the big picture out there of what the overall goal of creating these regulations. But, it's public comment if this is a town hall to collect public information. And so you're welcome to make a statement, but just, I guess, with the caution that it's not advocating towards a certain application or petition or anything like that.
That's just, we're just trying to protect. Mr. Richmond's aware of what we're saying tonight, but thank you. The board should consider working more in depth with already established and proven outfitters. Any permitting that is put into place is only appropriate if it matches current customer volume and any pre-existing permitting length. Permitting length needs to account for the upfront investment on safety equipment, infrastructure, machines, and staffing plans. Furthermore, there needs to be clear language that addresses that volume for responsible operators that are already established will not face any reduced business volume. This should not be a problem to include if this is not the underlying intention. Additionally, the ordinance needs to be clear exactly what violations are and which ones will result in being banned from permits in the future. If the Board of County Commissioner wishes, we would be happy to have supporters testify in front of the board for further perspective on who this is all affecting. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm a private public user, but also a commercial operator, and just to tag on a little bit with Madison. I think the county's in a good spot. We have, how is it described, good operators that want to do the right thing. I don't want to speak for other operators, but I can speak to what I see out there. And we're the ones picking up the trash. We're the ones asking private out-of-town users, hey, don't drive over there. That's trespassing, because it's so important to us to preserve it. And our town and county is so important to us. I think that education, youth education is awesome, but I think education for everybody could be emphasized more. In our shop, we have dozens of people throughout the summer, especially come in. Do you have a map? Where can I go? I'm from Texas. I have my machines here on a trailer. I don't know where to go. And we do the best we can to keep them on the straight and narrow because we don't want them to damage our reputation, because it is difficult to decide who's doing what up there. Anyway, further education for everybody in the form of maps. We could talk about that endlessly, but workshops, etc. Getting the youth over to the motocross track. That motocross track is awesome, but it's intimidating. A kid doesn't know that, but we're the ones going to that kid saying, hey man, it's not that cool to go 50 down the street. Let's get you over to the track so we can learn some real skills and be operating where you should be. Anyway, point is, I think that the commercial groups that are here are the good players, and we're in a pretty good spot. It is, like you said earlier, it is so important to us to preserve it, that we are the ones kind of walking the line up there. So I think if we could continue on that education path, I get that you guys have been commissioned with this permit and whatnot, and I understand that, but I guess I want to be on record saying we're in a pretty good spot. I've been in other towns, not that far from here, where we weren't in a great spot, and it was much more adversarial than we are here now. So.
Great, that's really good information for us that we don't know.
You mentioned earlier that the county has real estate that they're designating toward residential. And you also mentioned that the standards of the commercial permit is going to be no evidences in residential areas. I guess my thing is, I live on the east side and I hear 13-year-olds with their two-strokes wrapped out all day long. It just doesn't seem fair that the people that have done all the good deeds are the ones, no good deed goes unpunished. You know, so it feels like people in this room that really care about this are the ones that have to raise their standards even higher from the gold standard that you're saying we already have.
Yeah, just so I better understand. So is there something within the permit ask or the standard that is more than like I'm asking that from the education. Is there something within the permit itself that is for, and the question for all of you, like, is there something within those standards or the model ordinance that's just immediately like
Noise ordinances in residential areas? Absolutely, that's the one.
It doesn't,
It's not proposed to match our existing permits.
that the application should, doesn't,
It's asking for annual review or a max of 3 years when we have a permit that goes for much longer than that. We pay for it, we've earned it.
so the permit that you have is for a private potential, that it doesn't include the current.
No, I'm talking about our sports service.
Okay, so having to take that in, but it hasn't considered county roads or county paths or other county facilities that are supporting.
What I'm saying, we're asking what's concerning about the documents and what's part of what I just spoke to and what we've shared in these meetings for the last year is if permitting is going to be put in place, it has to match what's already existing at a minimum.
What we already have.
And so I'm not a decision maker, can't answer that question, but what I'm saying is through the application process, that's your opportunity, that's your evidence on the record. That's what you state when you come before the board, and you, that everything that you said in that very eloquent statement is exactly what I would have in an application to say, this is my just, well, this is a public hearing process, is a quasi judicial process. So if you have evidence on the record that supports that, there has to be, and again, Chris is probably gonna, just a minute, I'm not an attorney, but it is an evidence and testimony. public process, where you have that opportunity to say exactly what you said.
I really do like you. And you've been great for the community, you have. But you're saying one thing, and then, I just, we're hearing other, so that it's kind of like, everything's so vague. And to top it off, I go, you're making us feel all warm and fuzzy. And it sounds great, but then it seems like when you get with the board, it's not that at all. Is that correct? That you're not agreeing upon? Because
The board is
no, it's not. I'm saying from previous meetings.
I want to say that's our experience too. I want to say that in public. That's exactly how our experience is. And that's from level ATB.
So let me just make sure that roles are really understood. I am staff. I am not a decision maker. I am staff. I am going to explain to you what is required to come in, and I'm going to explain the process to you. I'm going to explain what's needed to make an application, but I will not be the ultimate decision maker on anything. So I prepare the process. I've been commissioned with is to prepare the transparent.
You're gonna be able to approach a meeting with like each outfitter and maybe set the standards by, the goal field of.
Absolutely. I mean, if you would like to create or suggest the standards, we can put those, we can include that within our findings to the board. It's been recommended by, and so like merit-based longer terms of comments have been something that we highlighted based on conversations that we had with outfitters.
We would like to bring in our whole staff and sit down and have a meeting with the board if that's possible.
Well, I think this is
So
the opportunity to offer those specifics as well, and we're not opposed to those conversations, but also, I mean, the noise ordinance is something that we have in all of our planning, and that's something that's standard across all land use, all additional use permits. And some of these things are things that I don't think they're insurmountable. I think that means, we drive at 8 miles an hour, or this and that, and through residential, through the city. I don't think that these requirements are unique to this proposed permitting process. And I also don't think that regulations should be a surprise to anybody, doing any kind of operating, including whiteout, fishing and rivers. There's limited outfitter permits and licenses that you can get for many outfitting guide recreation uses.
And what I'm hearing from White Mountain is the fact that they, at least part of it, is that they have a lot of infrastructure involved with all their equipment, all their employees, everything that perhaps that, and I'm not saying that the Forest Service is 100% the greatest thing to permit through. However, their outfitter guiding permit is for 10 years. And that gives them an opportunity to know that if they're in good standing, can operate for 10 years. Now, I don't know if that's something that the county is willing to do, considering they're brand new at this, right? And so, of course, your experience with the Forest Service is probably very valuable to share with the county. But the intent behind this, and I know that folks are saying, are we trying to make it bigger than a gold standard? I think we're just trying to bring it up. So there's an actual permit. So there's terms and conditions of operation on county roads. Saying where they can operate, when they can operate, indemnifying not the Forest Service, but the county if somebody gets injured, right? Showing that proof of insurance. I think it's something that operators that use those types of permits on Forest Service lands are very familiar with. And that you have to bring that type of experience, good and bad, to the county to help them with how to permit, because that annual review I think would be, I mean, of course you have an annual review with the Forest Service with different, your annual operating plans that you have to bring out. But I think that may be cumbersome for the board And it's also gonna be cumbersome for the operators. As just what I'm hearing.
I mean, is it possible that, you know, the longevity that we've had, that we could be a part of a board? You know, just the way I would say Ski Cooper operates? Is that possible to include like
Understand that question or how that would.
like somebody as in the outfitters be part of the evaluation board that trying to put together?
Yeah.
For the permits,
And evaluate. One
or
thing I
evaluating.
For lots of trail development and recreation conversations,
What's
the
that?
one group that does not have an organized group are motorized users.
True,
And that has been a problem.
and it had, they've been passive too long. Way too long. I agree.
And
Actually, this could fix that. I haven't.
Well, there's
Be more.
any board or it would be advisory,
Yeah,
right?
that's all I'm saying.
Board.
We had to
And
pay
so
back.
this whole process
Yeah,
is
correct.
meant to do that
Okay.
and take that information.
And then we take your question and.
It's not a question, actually more of a comment, two quick things. One, I do support if there's a permit that goes through 1 year is not sufficient for operators. You just can't plan around that. And I want to try to do what I can dispel the fear or paranoia around having a regulatory system in place. Somebody who operates for an entity that has permits, Forest Service, BLM, Park Service in this state, Utah, Wyoming, Arizona, and a variety of other locations. They're actually quite beneficial. And I think in this particular scenario, the goal, well, one of the outcomes, maybe not the goal, one of the outcomes is actually to regulate how many operators are operating, which could be a blessing for those that are currently operating. And I think, I get a sense there's this fear in the room that like nobody's gonna be issued a permit. I think that's exactly the opposite. I think most folks are gonna be issued a permit because you are doing the good work. You are doing the cleanup. You're doing the same stuff I'm doing when I have students out in the forest on an educational or a guided trip type thing. We're trying to educate folks, trying to clean up, we're trying to maintain the places and having fewer competitors, fewer general folks out there maintains the quality of the experience for your employee, your clients, your entity. So I would just encourage folks to really try to think about this from the flip side, that this could be highly beneficial. And I agree, getting some standards like within the companies, having discussions, creating an organized group so that everybody's on the same page and singing the same song and helping the county could really be beneficial to it. It's certainly helped us, and I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, I think maybe in the room, it's maybe not so much more the regulations and the little things we have to do. Meat and potatoes, where can we go in our volumes? Well set, finances that we all make. So that's why we're all concerned. And some things that come up on here can be a bit confusing. And start having to look other places, like that backcountry zoning. Some of the land, public land, or that's set aside for housing, that's yet to come, but does have a big impact on what's going on now. So we kind of need to see this picture before see that. So that's why there's a big, we don't know. We're just trying to protect our livelihoods.
We're so much worried about the permitting, but it's the evaluating us in years to come and how that's gonna be.
That's a standard process.
I know, but yeah, no,
so
exactly, and I know, and this will probably be better. I
It's
hope
more
it is.
safe, it's more bureaucracy.
But I'm just saying, I'm just curious,
And we're
and we'd like to know, before.
I think another issue is this data being collected across all usage groups, or is this specific to OHV? Because it feels like this ordinance is being pushed without the proper data collection across all usage groups, with the assumption OHVs are the highest usage group on county roads, which might not be the case.
And I'm happy to speak to that, because when we were doing tours on the east side every single day, we actually established the trail counts every single day about the number of people we encountered. And we averaged about 1.7 person per day between motorized and non-motorized. So the county want to talk about numbers. We actually have actual proof and we have real trail counts, that we're more than happy to provide. And we provided this data month ago in the previous OHV meetings, and somehow there's still misunderstanding about how East Side is super packed, is overrun, whatever, is way too occupied. Another comment I want to make is to tag on that is, are we proposing a sticker program for every single person that is going to be recreating on the east side? Are we gonna be are hikers, mountain bikers, cross country skiers that also use county roads going to be applying for that sticker program? Why is OHV being responsible for maintaining the trails and the roads? I mean, us as commercial outfitters, we already pay 29% in commercial private property tax. It's 29% on every single vehicle we own. And we already contribute significantly on the property tax to the county, which in my opinion is supposed to be used for road maintenance. Why are we as OHV users being asked to contribute even more for roads that everyone else uses too?
We have a couple of other online questions real quick that we haven't answered. This meeting is actually-
What are the answers to that?
I'm so sorry. That's not.
Why is the arrangement considered the highest usage of county? Not property question.
I think,
Right, and generally, but
We
go
can't.
ahead. I mean,
there will be so many permanent trails on the ground.
that is true.
I would say that the sticker program right now in its creation is designed as basically, and also for us to understand, it's a data collection. Is to support what you said about machines coming in from out of the areas that we measure that. It's a matrix tool. It's not designed to be cost prohibitive or cost burden. It's more of a measuring device. But that part I can't talk about taxation. But I have to stay in my lane.
Sorry, real quick. I think the question is, why is the target on OHV's back? I'm not saying it's not like it.
Because the next step is to get shut down completely, like, look at. When it is, they have 4 mile use, but they basically shut down OHV use on all the roads. That's the next step. We don't learn how to work with what we're being presented with here. We're gonna get blanket bans across the board, and that's what that's what I would like to see avoided. So it sounds like 2/3 of the issues that have been brought up can be addressed with enforcement, like the out of town rentals, these chunder nuggets driving on Ball Mountain off the road, tearing up the Alpine. Like, we don't want to see that, but we can make all these rules that preserve our local guide companies and kind of corral people into the places where they need to be. What I want to know is, how are we going to enforce that? If there's not enforcement agents out there, these guys shouldn't have to be telling people where they should ride. They shouldn't be picking up people's litter. Those people should be getting ticketed, and that should go towards our community, like our trail upkeep. So how does the enforcement, like, there's not cops out there or agents on a 4-wheeler or a snowmobile or a dirt bike. They're not gonna write tickets from a Ford Explorer.
And isn't the local law enforcement stressed enough or strained enough to go after commercial users? Isn't there, wasn't it in paper that the sheriff and the county and the police are gonna merge because of the strain on resources, and now we're gonna put law enforcement on commercial OHV users?
So that was opposing it, whereas I think I heard.
No, we're on the same page.
I think this is again, the OHV community. I've been here 25 years. I guide for a motorcycle company, not here, but across most of Colorado. And other communities, the picture's a lot cleaner. Like, it's not, we enjoy a pretty solid level of OHV access here. The writing's on the wall, and we're gonna lose a lot of it. We can't figure out how to all find a middle ground. That's my main point. Turning the temperature down a little bit, try to butt heads a little less, and try and figure out where we can have less user conflict, where we can keep riding but not generate complaints all the time, and that's gonna require some kind of enforcement. We gotta keep the rental companies out of town honest. We gotta keep these out of town littering people honest. You know, it's like, you know, the locals and the guide companies are not much of a problem. There's bad actors here. You know, the helmetless kids rapping their 80s out up and down the street all day, driving people crazy. That's what people see now when they see a dirt biker. They don't see the guy, you know, on a spark arrested, you know, off-road bike out on the trail, riding along peacefully doing this thing. They just see the bad actors. So the education part, we started a program, we started laying the groundwork for a youth education program at the track. We're building more single track up there as it goes, but we only make a mile tops with the property we have up there. So, you know, we need more trails, we need more enforcement to make this stuff work for the benefit of everybody, where it's just gonna be a lot of like birds on the screen.
Yes, ma'am.
Does, I have a question about youth, education. I'm from Minnesota, and we have a very healthy snowmobile and off-road trail system. It's very significant, and does the state of Colorado not require you to be trained to ride a snowmobile or an off-road vehicle? Is that a local?
State and trail is the closest thing we have with statewide education program.
Minnesota, if you're going on site.
But up front here, she's been so patient.
I just wanted to see if you could give me a vision for where you as staff and maybe the commissioners, or what the vision is for how to administer this. I owned a guide service over in Eagle County for more than 30 years, and that was a very full-time job for many staff members in the local agency. So what I'm wondering about is it seems to me that your office handles a lot of things. And so where does the attention get paid to this kind of use, and how that then may integrate with that commercial private public interface? Because commercial can be regulated, it's what gets regulated, and it's the public that I think Forest Service did quite a few capacity studies over in Eagle County that actually showed that the capacity was more public use than it was actually commercial use. So just trying to kind of, again, like say, okay, there's a person or people that are dedicated to this. There is a group of people that can come together that might be both serving the public side of it and also the commercial side of it. And how do we collaboratively come together to say, wow, okay, this is like visioning where this county is going for years, not just now. It's like into perpetuity, right? So can you share a little bit more about what you all have in mind for where you are today and what that vision looks like, and what the possibility is to have a larger discussion than just this ordinance?
I think that's great, and I think that's really at the heart of kind of where we're at. We're at a starting point, and we're really fortunate that Lake County leadership has created more capacity in the last even year within the organization. So we are starting this journey with these tools and resources, but we are working collaboratively with pros, with Public Works, with the Sheriff's Office. And so there is definitely, this is merely a starting point. This is kind of at the beginning of the work. And, we're fortunate to have leadership that, sees the importance in this work and has provided us capacity. And so this is I think the vision of this, and I'm happy to let anyone else speak to this, but, from my position, I would say, this work is going to be a collaborative effort with, and a priority for Lake County moving forward. So you're absolutely spot on, and what we're bringing forth today is the starting point.
And will that leave room then for like you all as commissioners to say, we want a dedicated staff person or a dedicated person, but 4 days a week or whatever? I mean, it seems to me that some of the ambiguity that might be showing up here is because there's so many other things that are going on that no one person could possibly do just this job. I mean, this is a job in and of itself. At least that's been my experience with working with permit applications and all of that. So I just want to honor how much effort goes into creating this and to administering this, and to be able to not only feel that the outfitters are supported and the guides are supported, but that the public's actually supported in this process as well. So I would recommend a dedicated staff person for this.
Yeah, thank you. And echoing what Ann said, we've grown the Parks Rec and Open Space Department, and community planning and development and public works. We are adding positions as we can with the intention to share or dedicate the responsibilities to one person or across the departments as appropriate and actually effective. So that is definitely something we understand, but it's a really appreciate that.
Yes, Craig.
Very specifically, how about no more than 50 machines an hour going through Stumptown? Commercial machines. And then how about out at the lake, 100 machines per hour? Capping. I'm just throwing out, what's my experience? Is it just gonna, it's just gonna be big wall machines, one after another, and Turquoise Lake is a sacrifice zone, it's over, that's done. But up on the east side, it'd be nice to have a little cap that says, I don't know where you measure it from, or but it right there in Stumptown, it's a lot of machines to be going by. I don't know what that number is, but while I have outfitter guides ears, guys, there's a history of the mining district that goes back a long ways, and so I hear so much false information coming out of guides, telling people where they are, what they're doing, and which mine's which. And it's smoke, it's not true, some of it. So get the facts right when you're telling people about the mining district, because it probably doesn't matter to your guests. I don't know, tell them anything you want, but
You should put on a class and
yeah.
give us some real, real.
He'll draw that for you.
Dan, we do have just a couple comments.
I'm sorry.
Well,
Okay.
by the way.
Well, really quick, because we've got some people online that have been really patient. So has the county invested in signage or maps for commercial and private use for locals and visitors? Great idea. We have talked about signage early in the process. But certainly something that I think that's a great recommendation. I think signage is always great, and I think it's been on our radar for a while. And so we can certainly include that in our recommendation. So thank you for that, Jill. Keisha, why isn't there a cap on permits for commercial usage?
Is there?
No,
There's no plan for a cap.
there's
How
no,
many of the permits will be issued?
there's no current cap.
There's no current cap, but I think that's part of the conversation to figure out what our saturation point is and what we can go beyond. So I would imagine that folks.
Can we go back to?
Does that saturation point for commercial users somehow not bleed over into private users?
I'm sure it would, yeah. I mean, It will eventually, and I think to Andy's point, that's. You know, if there's real problems, like not that there aren't no problems with public users, but we have to look at that. And figure out how to wrap our arms around it.
So I guess, and to answer Keisha's question, why isn't there a cap yet? I think that's the basis of what we're. You know, this work will eventually address. And so again, we're at that starting point. And caps are something that we talked about a lot tonight and a potential for further consideration of what's sustainable for the community. White Mountain has abided by all and every permitted area without any discrepancies in 20 years plus. Thank you for that support for White Mountain. If the idea is just to collect data, why not just work with the commercial operators to get their data? I'm sure most would be glad to help you out. Sounds great.
Sounds great.
Sounds great. Affordable housing is a ploy. From the Legislative Club. The club provides grooming for all users of winter trails in Lake County. The users that seem to be targeted in permitting and studies has to do with OHV use. I would ask that we track not just OHV users, but all users of public trails. The club has a lot of work in housing grooming and very few volunteers. The club supports multi-use trails and believes that all users should be treated fairly. That was Derek. Is that all of them? Okay. Thank you for your online comments. Everybody tired? Any other, or love to open it up, if you have. I don't.
One more if I could quick. Somebody else just touched on the map that I talked about earlier. I can't emphasize enough how many people from out of town ask me for these maps. Not only could it be a map of here's where you can go, but it could be a quick hit of some quick rules. You know, here's what we expect of you while you're in our county, in our town. Are they all gonna abide by it? No, but it's putting something in their head that here's where you can go, here's what we expect of you while you're here. I just think that's such an easy way to start to create thinking around. We are thinking about this, everybody. Here's where we'd like you to be, and here's the rules. Stay off the tundra, respect other users, blah, 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 blah.
Great, and I think great minds think alike, because another one of your cohorts said the exact same thing. We would have loved a single program, and if you give them a map and the rules, it would be amazing. So I think that that's certainly.
Make us think about it too, us meaning the local users.
Right. And I think that's the intention of the online map too, if there could be a QR code or a better way to promote that access, and then what actually shows up with that, because all of what Bryce showed is public and accessible today. And it has been, and he continues to add and develop it. But if there's, I mean, if we need to make that a separate map, or eventually I envision that being a separate map, and maybe as you're saying, it's not layers embedded where you have to kind of look for that, but there's some clear, pretty concise bulleted expectations that pop up with that. That might be a better.
Could be some marketing. I'm not a marketer, but you know, hey, it also hit up our awesome motocross track in town. But
yeah,
you know, yeah.
Great suggestions. Great.
So as it stands right now, it is legal to ride your OHV down county road.
As a private user from point A to point B for a recreational purpose. As long as you are abiding by the rules of the road.
Is there a day set for when these plans are gonna be presented to the board? So that earlier that you're planning on presenting this to the board, when's that supposed to happen?
So the recommendation, you've all heard it this evening. Of course, they heard in real time these the public input. So we've been taking notes this evening, and we'll include that in everything that you've suggested tonight has been recorded, I believe, and will be part of what the board users in order to make their decisions.
But
And
I mean, the original intent and proposed on our agenda for the 5th, because the ordinance runs through the 1st. But I wonder if we want to take some more time, maybe a month or two, and make sure that we really refine that based on the feedback tonight. And so I would ask you as staff to please check in with the board members to see if we want to consider that.
great, we'll do. So that would mean that we would take some additional time to consider everything that we heard tonight, which was great educational time for staff and great feedback. And we'll weigh in with the board and see if another month would be more appropriate to making sure that before any decisions are made, that everything has been considered. Yes.
Sort of a related question to that. So the moratorium is gonna end on December 1st, but yet there's no ordinance, there are no plans. You know, how would you handle a new application without, without better guidelines that have been approved by the board? Shouldn't the moratorium just be considered continued for another couple of months? Otherwise, you're gonna have somebody coming in to apply, and you're not gonna have guidelines.
That's what we meant.
Okay.
An extension of the
Yeah,
moratorium.
Oh, okay.
we'll have to, I think we'll have to consider that in the next couple of days. Because of the moratorium deadline, or terminating on the 1st, so. I think we'll probably consider that as a board in the next couple of days.
Yeah, but you're absolutely right, and that would be the what we would need to do internally to allow that extra time. Thank you all so much. And
Thank you.
we remain available. Bryce, I did get to introduce you to William, she's our assistant. CC, Bryce, or I are still available if you have other